fun. Just hung out. Like, I mean, we did hardly any stuff. That's the weird thing. So.
Welcome, everybody, to our third Witcher discussion. This one will be for Blood of Elves, that you see Joe holding over there. I guess we'll kind of go around and introduce. Joe can introduce himself first, since he's got the merchandise.
I'm JCM Byrne. I write the Hybrid Helix. You can find me at jcmburn.com or my YouTube channel at JCM Byrne. You may be noticing a pattern. and you should read my fourth book. Shadow of Hyperion is out right now, and right now it has a 5-star rating on Amazon with 13 ratings. It's only going to go down. So if you read the best possible experience, because right now it's a 5-star book. If you wait 2 weeks, it won't be. It'll probably be like at best, 4.8, 4.5, something like that. So you should
get it while it's hot.
Get it while it's good, because it's getting worse every week. It's going to drop and get worse.
That's a great way.
So hurry.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Thank you.
Oh my God, I love it.
I'm totally using that. I'm stealing that. That's great. Oh man, I guess it's me. I'm Bryce from Shelf Centered, and I hated The Witcher for I think like 10 years. Was not a fan, and then somehow the Joes got me together to reread it. And I reread The Last Wish, and I actually really, really loved it. And so I'm addicted. I'm a fan, and I'm here for it. I thought I was going to be like, hey, good, you need a naysayer in the group, right? I thought I was going to be the naysayer, and I was happy to do it. But here I am, a fan, and just fanning along with everybody. So here we go.
Yeah. And if you're here, you know who I am. Author of the More Than Human novels. So this is my third time reading through these books, but it's the first time in like 5-6 years, so a lot of it was like new, or at least I didn't remember a lot of it, because like when you read a series that's kind of long like this, most of what you remember is right at the beginning and right at the end.
That's true.
So like a lot of this, I was like, I kind of knew what was going on, but I didn't know the details. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what happened. Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, like that's what happened. But I guess we'll start with Joe. Like what were your like thoughts coming from the short stories into novels? Like what was your initial? Well, we won't say what happened on the last one, but you did read The Last Wish, and then you came into this. So what was your initial thoughts?
I was impressed. I mean, this is definitely transitioned from that short story to that novel format, and without I didn't feel like you lost this. I mean, it's a little episodic feeling of a novel, but it still feels like connected in a way the short stories weren't meant to, right? They were published separately, right? So they weren't supposed to be. So I thought it didn't feel like a fix up, right? If they call it a fix up novel, take a bunch of short stories and make a novel out of it. They were originally released separately. It didn't feel like that.
Like the Gunslinger, right? Isn't the Gunslinger one of those?
Yeah,
there is, but like all the Conan stuff definitely was.
Yeah,
a lot
I'm about to read iRobot, so that's like 6 short stories that were all combined. So we'll see who did it better, who smashed them together better.
Yeah. So I like this a lot. Yeah, I like this a lot. I was impressed.
Yeah, I liked it too. It is weird because JCM Joe. So can I go Joe and Joseph? What do you guys prefer? Yeah, what you said about episodic, it kind of is because it's just so weird. And I don't mean to go too much into any spoilers yet here, but I am just like a structural kind of spoiler, I guess.
Yeah.
Because it is like the first, like 3/4 is its own story with The Witcher. And then the last quarter is like Yennefer and Ciri. And it's like, it is just like, yeah, I mean, I guess these were happening at the same time. So they like are like going along at the same, in the same story, and they're all connected, and they each like refer to each other and are talking about the exploits of the other to some degree. But it is like, oh, okay. So like, it's not, I mean, the 3-act structure kind of like kind of happened in that first 3/4, and then like I know I'm like it was just kind of a weird like, oh, we're not going back to that in this book. Like that was, it was a bit of like a cliffhanger, like ending to that 3/4. For me, I just wasn't ready for that. And then that last quarter was like, oh, this is the rest of the book, and then that's it. Okay, that was the last I was going to see of them, and then I'd be like, okay, because I was ready for more in that. I was ready for, I guess, I wanted some revenge or some answers or whatever, all that kind of stuff. But I get it. It's a series. It's a whole thing. But anyway, it worked for me. Like I said, I'm a fan now, and I was, I was really liking these short stories because they've been very clever for the most part. They are able to kind of put together an idea and get some good characterization in a very short amount of time, and then also a lot of times like twist it a little enough to make me surprised. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, can he do that with longer? And yeah, it was, anyway. I liked it a lot, just as a general bit there.
Yeah, I don't know, like what kind of publishing deal he had, because I'm sure that this was still all Polish. I don't know if he had made it big enough to where it was like a worldwide, thing. But he was all in on the long story, because this book, like when it ends, it's like it's not even a real ending. It's like, there's another book out there. Like, thank God it picked up enough for them to keep publishing these books. Because this would have been like, I can imagine if you were reading these as they came out, you'd be like, why? Like, what are we? You better be coming out real soon with this next book.
Yeah, it's a crappy standalone. Right? It's a crappy. It's clearly not meant to be a standalone.
Yeah, like he was all in. He's like, they're going to publish the next one. There's no doubt. Like,
the short stories were like you read about the child surprise thing, and it was like cute for what it was, and then you're like, okay, that's fine. If I never find out more about Ciri, it's fine.
Right.
But at this point, that's no longer true. Like, you don't finish this, and you're like, oh, if I never find out more about Ciri and Yennefer, I'm fine. Like, you're not fine.
You're like,
that's not fine. That's not okay. So
not okay.
Marked on a thing. I don't know if I'm curious, and I'm sure someone has interviewed him and asked, but I am curious. Like, at this point, did he have a 6-book series outlined? What? 6 or whatever it ends up being, or was he like sort of pantsing it? But it was definitely not meant to end here.
That's what I love about you. You were just mentioning, Joe, that you just ran into Jim Butcher. Yeah. Just recently at the last con you went to. You have to tell everybody about that, but no setup here or anything. But anyway, I love how that's one of those where you go, it's planned to be an over 20 book series for the Dresden Files. It's on, what is it, 18 now? And but he planned that all out. Like, it is all planned. So I love that at least the general, like, maybe not the specific details obviously of every single book, but for the most part, he planned out the 21 books. So,
but I'm sure someone knows, and I don't know if any of us do, but I wonder when Butcher started, when he did that. Like, I can't.
20 books? In college.
As I understand it, it was for that writing class where his teacher was like, you got to do all these things, and he hated it. He finally did it. Was like, I'm going to do it just to
I'm going to do it just the way you say.
I'm going to do everything. And then the teacher was like, whoa, this is publishable.
She goes, because she said, I don't know, because he came to her and he was like, he's like, oh yeah, I have a 20 book outline. And she's like, she like patted him on the head. Oh yeah. She goes, but she's like, the first story that he's like, she goes, this is publishable. I don't know if it'll be the first thing you ever publish, but this is publishable. And he had a 20 story. Now, again, he's said in further things that he's like molded it and changed and pushed it out. Oh, now it's like a 23 book thing, but he goes, so he seemed to have the most of it outlined. So, but I don't know if Sapkowski had the same thing. Like, he knew exactly where he was going with it.
I can't imagine he did when the first short stories came out. But
clearly, when you're doing short stories, you're just kind of, this will be cool, that'll be cool, this will be cool.
Yeah, but by the time this book comes out, he clearly has a plan.
Yeah,
right.
And
he's so good at faking it. It's like one of the two.
I don't know. One thing I will say, like, as I was going through this book, I was thinking to myself, and I just put up a poll yesterday because it started me thinking, and I was just like, man, Sapkowski, I really hate you because his prose are so good. I don't like. People say it's even better in Polish, and I'm just like, how? How is it better? His prose are like, they're digestible, but they're so varied and so, it just works for the time. You're like, especially if you played the games and stuff, like, what it looks like, what time frame you're supposed to be in. You're like, it just works, And so, I don't know if you guys were noticing that too, but I'm like, I was like, my prose will never be as good as Sapkowski.
I totally play the translation game. You're like, how much is this the translator? How much is this the original? I'm constantly going, because this is good. And that's why I'm asking that. I'm going, whose is this? Whose good is this?
Yeah. But the translator had to be good also.
Yeah, I think they both have to be good. That's a good point.
Right. So kudos to the translator who is not named on the front cover.
Yeah.
From the back. You can't
But
read.
I love this book because we get you start to get and again it's a novel, right? So you do get more, into the characters, into the backstory of what's going on. And I love the backstory of the world and how he's so masterful at it wasn't right at the beginning of the book. It was maybe like 20% in or so, but he does an info dump that if you're not really looking for it, it is really good. Like the way he uses it in like story mode and Dandelion telling stories and people asking Dandelion questions, and they're just like, it's like Q&A and stuff. I'm like, you're info dumping right now, but it's really good.
I had to rewind that part because I was like, whoa, wait.
Yeah.
I did the audio. I had to rewind. I was like, what? Because that was really good. That was in that. Is that, are you talking about the Dandelion part where he's told the whole story and everyone's like, how does it end? Come on.
Yeah.
That's it. In there, and like you've got like the teenagers are like, they fall in love, right? And it ends happily ever after. And then other people are like, it's good for war. The war parts are good because I was part of the war. And then you got the other guys like, I didn't see you there. And it's like, really? You didn't see
I love that.
One person in the war? I thought
like,
it was funny.
Sapkowski is so good with his his humor is great where the people are arguing back and forth. I didn't see you there. Yes, because you were in the back of the line.
Yeah.
They're like,
I was a
go, bro, basically.
Yeah.
The scenes almost feel angry. Like he spent too much time in pubs with people arguing about politics.
Right.
And he's just copying him. Like, I know that jerk. I'm going to put him in this book.
Yeah.
He's arguing about it. And this is,
You don't think I was there?
It felt very much like a real argument people have in a real pub. Drinking like warm beer, and somewhere in like a small town in Poland.
Right. For sure.
From what I hear from my family from small towns in Poland.
But like, what did you think about? Because I know there were some people there, some people disagree. Like, what did you think about because it starts off with like a dream sequence, and some people don't like dream sequences, but
I can't stand dream sequences for me. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
No.
I'm like, I am like one that I don't like them. I don't like that way to tell a story so much. Although, like play in things like the Wheel of Time, it kind of works because it becomes like its own place in like reality kind of, where that starts to work for me. I can get over it though, too, when it's done well and when it's just not relied upon too much. Right. And I thought, there was a good dream sequence at the end of Sword of Destiny, right? Where it's more like what is it? Where the Witcher's just having like, I don't know, a spell.
Oh, yeah, right? Yeah. When
so
he's all like, messed up.
Yeah, he's all messed up. He's kind of like in and out and like he's like recovering kind of. I thought that was really well done, right? In the fact that it was just him like really mostly telling actual things, right? And maybe that's why I liked it because he was actually like telling real events, wasn't he?
And I think I think this dream sequence was also kind of telling you
Yeah.
how Ciri got out
Yeah,
of
exactly.
the battle. But
it's a way to get a trauma without making it explicit.
Yeah,
it's true. Yeah, that's
you don't
a good
want to
point.
explicitly talk about traumatizing a kid, but you're going to hint at it really strongly, which I guess is better. I don't know.
Well, and that's what I was just
imagination.
about to say. She's got PTSD, like,
Right.
and she, every so often she'll bring up the man with the feathers on his hat and how she's like, it freaks her out and stuff, and she talks in her sleep, and but one thing I did like, and you don't ever expect this to be the thing in the short stories, but like how Dandelion is now kind of a semi-secret agent, like, or he's working for Dijkstra, who I love as a character, like, and especially if you play the video games, like they pretty much keep his character pretty close to the books in the games, and he's awesome. Like, he's like a 7-foot tall spy, like Spy King, like.
Yeah. I was really surprised to see. I was just like, Dandelion's a spy too, and he's been hanging out with like, and I immediately go to like, all right, I don't like him. I don't like him. He's gonna betray Geralt.
But one thing, where Dandelion is in the pub at the beginning, and then he has when that one guy comes into the room, like Dandelion sneaks out while everyone's arguing. I love that, where they kind of look around and they're like, "Oh, it's because that weasel's gone or whatever."
I thought that was hilarious.
And I was like, I would have done the same thing. Like, as everyone's arguing, I'm like, creep out of the bed.
Like it's a D&D thing. Like, oh wait, he's bard class. What else can he do? So he can sing and play the lute. Oh, he's got thieving skills, according to the player's handbook. So Dandelion must have thieving skills. It's almost like derivative from the gaming.
Oh, that's true. That's funny.
Yeah. But like one thing he does, like when he's in the room by himself or whatever, he's kind of trying to relax, and that guy, goes like kind of barges in the room to see him, and Dandelion starts doing like an internal thought process, and then he starts talking about, and it's like the celebrity, like how celebrities kind of like we think we know them just because we listen to their songs or we watch them in movies, and that's kind of how he's like. He was talking like he's like, yeah, this guy really thinks he knows who I am or whatever, and acts like he's my friend and stuff, and like you don't know anything about me, And I mean that's true. Like a lot of times, like you're like, oh, I've read all your books, like, or I've watched all your movies, so I know who you are. And you're like, no, you do. They're playing a character there or whatever. I mean, maybe a little bit. You might know somebody's personality by the books they write, but like, especially for actors, it's like no. They're just playing a role, like, and people just think, "Oh, that I know everything about you."
And even more so for like YouTube personalities, because you really get to know the actual like person a lot of times, and you can kind of maybe almost be more maybe like that. I don't know, but people do kind of start to feel like they know like the YouTube person. I just have seen like Mike because I don't have this problem.
I mean, we're just sitting on 100,000 subs,
Mike of Mike's Book Reviews, who just hit 100,000. Yeah, he'll do. He'll have that where people like they know him very well, right? And he doesn't know them the other way, and that's why I'm getting in on the beginnings of both of you guys. When you guys hit it big, you'll have to then remember me. So it's great.
Yeah, that's what my wife says. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh man. But one of my favorite things, and I guess we can kind of lead towards that way since Nathan can't be here today, but he threw us a question. One of the coolest things in this book is we get to see Kaer Morhen, like, and that is so freaking cool. Like when they're riding up and they're seeing like and you didn't know what they were until like a good way into the book, until they just decided to bring it up and let you know. Like, but when they were coming up, there was like bones and skulls and stuff, and you're like,
yeah.
And at first, at the beginning, I'm thinking, okay, there's just like animals they killed or monsters, and they've just kind of left them out there. But then, later on, you realize that there was a battle, and they just left all the dead there.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Well, and I start to go like, how much is just like their own dudes, that
Yeah.
their own
Yeah,
people? They're just
I
kind of
think that's
like
what they said. They just left
didn't
everybody out
survive
there.
the trials and stuff.
Oh, yeah. You're thinking, maybe
I
kids
started
that
thinking
didn't-
through that too, like, toss
Yeah,
them
like,
out.
well,
every time the apprentice is like, I'm tired. Oh, you want to join the pile of bones? Or
look out
keep
there.
running. Like, keep moving.
Yeah.
But I guess that leads into the question Nathan posted. Do you think that they should have tried, to give her the grasses? I'm in the no.
Come on, she's a
You
girl.
know.
Girls can't be witchers.
Oh my god, I love that whole
Right.
whole thing.
You can't have a uterus and still be competent.
Yeah, her weight's distributed differently. She can't do that.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
but I love her spirit where she's like, I'll do it.
Yeah. No. She's got that. That's that. I mean, it's not like a super original character, but it's a good character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and she actually does. She does do the whole thing where she's like, somebody says that to her. Someone's like, "Oh, you're just a girl," and at first she's like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm a girl," or later in the book where she's like, "I can't do that because I'm a virgin. Virgins can't do magic," or whatever. and I love Jennifer. Like, Jennifer's like, who told you that stupid stuff? Jennifer's so much better in this book than she was in the last book. She's just like, she's mean, but she's funny at the same time. She's like, well, I guess if you're worried about that, just go get it over with then.
But I get the like Chef Gordon Ramsay mean though out of her, right?
Yeah.
Like where you have like this like ultimately cares about the well-being of someone she sees a lot of like potential in, and just but doesn't want, like doesn't spare the rod either, like because it's like, I want you to become something big. I don't know, that's kind of where I get is this kind of Gordon Ramsay.
That she would have this protective instinct for Ciri that she never would have had for Geralt, right? Because he doesn't need it. He's a hyper competent dude, so it never brought that out of her. So she never really showed him a lot in the way of like protecting him, caring for. If anything, the opposite. She was like perfectly happy to stab him in the back because he'd be fine.
Yeah.
And then with Ciri, the same person very reasonably would be like, okay, I'm going to actually take care of this kid because she's a kid.
Well,
not to mention her whole like, I want to be a mom thing.
I want to be a mom. Yeah.
Well, and then we
which
get
we all love.
then we get to
He wants to be a mom.
we get more of an interaction with the date raper Triss. So that was pretty, how she magically made Geralt hook up with her. I was like, I forgot that. I totally forgot that part. I knew they hooked up, but I forgot that's how it happened. She's like, oh yeah, they were in. She's just talking to herself, and she's like, yeah, they were in a bad spot, but So, him and Jennifer were in a bad spot. So I just wanted to slide in there and feel what it was. I was just like, Triss, what?
Yeah.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine if it was the other way around? How bad, like, they would have eviscerated him if he would have been like, oh yeah, Geralt magically did something, like.
It was a different time, man. It was a different time, late 80s, early 90s when this was written, something like that.
Oh my god!
But it's like this.
Like, other than that, Triss was pretty nice. She was pretty nice to everybody outside of that. Like, she was like protecting like Ciri. She made like Ciri's like, oh yeah, like, oh yeah, and of course you have Ciri's not doing so well on the obstacles, and it turns out it's because she's having that time of the month for the first time, and like none of the guys knew. I love the guys' reaction. They're like, huh? And she's like, oh yeah, you never thought to ask her, did you? And they're like, and then they're like, just the way he talks about it, like you could see the guys just turn away and be like, yeah, we didn't know anything about that.
Oh man.
Makes her come out in that dress, and she's like, yes, I'm indisposed at the moment, and I will not be participating. Like,
yeah, very 88.
Yeah,
very. I feel like if that had been written 25 years later, it wouldn't have gone that way.
Well, speaking of the Wheel of Time that I mentioned earlier, like they had its own like, it's like it's okay if it's female rape, right? We're okay with that, apparently.
Yeah. It's fine. Nobody cares about the guys in the situation.
Like,
we should just be grateful.
yeah, it's kind of,
Yeah.
But that's the 80s, 90s. That's exactly. It was like, well, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course.
It was funny, right? If a guy was
it's funny.
it's by a woman, it's funny back then. And I really feel like if those same books had been written in like 10 years ago, I think it would have been different. But I mean, you have to take it for what it is.
Yeah. But one thing in the when they were at Kaer Morhen, you got the way they figured out that she was like she was a source or whatever, where she was like stealing alcohol while they were all like having dinner, drinking the white gull, and set her off into a trance, and they all like freaked out. And then like Triss was sitting there like drinking, and then she's like, "Yo, go ahead and take the drink," and like about rips the whole building to pieces or whatever. But
just alcohol, or was there more to it?
What's that?
Was it just alcohol, or was there more to that drink?
Well, that drink has the white gall, they said, was just a minor hallucinogen. It's like
it wasn't.
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah,
it was more than that.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a hallucinogen in that one. And Triss was all freaked out about it. She's like, "You let her drink this?" And they're like, "It's a hallucinogen." And they're like, "No, this one's just a little bit. The black gall is the one you don't want to mess with." Yeah. But and then we find out like it was pretty tragic. Like Triss's story about like how she got like set on fire at the battle was it Sodden Hill or whatever, and now she's still got like burn marks on her chest and stuff. Like it was so bad they couldn't heal her. Like all her hair was burned off, and I guess Yennefer lost her eyes or something. But I mean,
there's a lot. They keep coming back to themes about women losing their appearance or being not attractive and needing to be more attractive, and that being very fundamental to their desires to do magic. Isn't that Yennefer's backstory? That's it on the show.
Well, no, the show goes a lot more in depth. Like in none of these books did we get the backstory that they gave her in the show. Like like as far as I know, as far as I remember, I mean, maybe as we go in through, like I said, I don't remember everything, but I'm pretty sure it never talks about her being a hunchback much or anything like that. Yeah. But I think they did that in the show to like make you like feel for her a lot more and stuff like that, because they were making her a main character in the show right off the bat. Right. So they wanted you to like, the whole stuff about her being at the magic school or whatever, and like the eels and although that was cool. That was pretty cool in the show, but I don't remember that in the books.
Okay.
Yeah. That's actually one of the things there's been a lot of videos recently about adaptations going on. But that's one of the things where I thought that was a good part of that I don't remember was the whole the magic school and the eels are like souls or something have something to do with that. Like, that's pretty sweet.
It was. But
but one of my favorite things, I don't know which, like if you guys thought this is pretty funny, is the my ugly one, where Yennefer just keeps calling her my ugly one through the entire book.
I was frustrated with that. I was just like, that is just so mean. Like for no reason.
Yeah. Like, it came out of nowhere. She's like, yeah, and she just randomly said it one time, and then she just completely saes it all the time now.
Like, it's like almost she saw the reaction. She saw the reaction, was like, all right, I know it gets to it right under her skin.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of thought it was Yennefer, like some kind of jealousy with Yennefer a little bit. And then I guess at the end, we kind of figure out it was kind of where she was like, no, you don't have to worry about using magic to look good. Like, you are beautiful or whatever. And I was like, oh.
Well, and I was like, was she trying to pull like, like the movie Miracle, right? Where they get everybody against the coach, right? And that's what kind of he's trying to get that unity by like just being miserable to everybody. And that's kind of what I was thinking is like maybe trying to, I don't know, but I'm like, it's just one person, so I don't know how you unify anything. But then, yeah, it was like, oh, it was just because of jealousy. It was mostly because of jealousy.
Yeah, I mean, but I did think it was pretty cool, like the interactions that Ciri had when she went to the Temple of Melita, where she's trying to learn, and like all the little girls, like she's running her. They took her sword from her, but she has like a little switch, and she's just like a little kid, just running around like hitting stuff with it and practicing her Witcher moves and stuff.
Yeah.
And all the girls are like making fun of her, like, "Oh, you don't have to do all the work that we have to do because you're off being a witcher or off being a sorceress." And she's like, "Yeah, you guys suck. You don't know nothing." Like, and I'm like, that is such like a 13-year-old thing to do.
Yeah, no, I thought he nailed that.
And this is early magic school stuff. Like, I feel like we're so used to that trope of magic school stuff now. It's just like it's everywhere. But in '88, it really wasn't. Like, it was pretty. I don't know. I don't want to say it's like the first, but it's not. It's not like everywhere in the late '80s that these kids are in because she's in a Witcher school and then in a magic school.
Yeah,
kind of interesting. Like,
the late '80s was going on quests.
Yeah,
I mean, not magic schools.
The training montage felt very '80s, right? The training montage and like that could have been Jean-Claude Van Damme doing that.
Yeah, yes, Norquest.
Just switch the blood sport, man. Just switch
Bloodsport of Elves.
You're kicking like a banana tree in like the next.
Kumate.
But like, but the magic school stuff, like Rand wasn't going to magic school, right? I mean, I guess it existed in Wheel of Time to a certain extent. The Aes Sedai. But was that even late 80s? Now I'm not even sure when that happened.
Wheel of Time was a 90s. Little bit. Yeah, it was
early 90s.
Wheel of Time was early mid 90s, yeah.
And that was later. And the Aes Sedai school stuff wasn't in the first book or two. All right, anyway.
Right.
Yeah. My point is, it's a little something. It always annoys. Isn't right. It's always a little frustrating. You read like an older book, and you're like, "Yeah, I've seen this a million times," but like wasn't a million when the person wrote it. Right, it's not fair, right? Because like it was really innovative. It's just that everyone's copied it since then, so it feels very like old hat.
Yeah, and you're just later to getting to it. Yeah,
like you read like War of the Worlds, and like War of the Worlds is like I've seen this a million times, but it was the first time.
Yeah, I just read just like last week. I read Legend of Earthsea, and it's like 68.
Yeah,
and that's what I said like in my review. I
was born. Yeah,
I was like,
a long time ago.
All these tropes, like. Every trope you could ever think about in classic fantasy is in Earthsea.
Yeah.
But like Earthsea was 50 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
So it was still relatively new. Like some of that stuff might even been her, making it up.
Right.
I was way late to that one actually, and Ringworld was another where it was like I've seen a lot of this, and it's like, oh well, Ringworld was actually really, really like it came up with a lot of those things.
I love Ringworld. Yeah, I put a Ringworld in my book, and someone was like, "You stole it from Ringworld." I'm like, "Yeah, so is everyone else."
It's called homage.
So it has Halo. So it has everyone.
Yeah, everyone's stolen this from Ringworld. It's
that like John said, like it becomes a trope for a reason because it's cool because it's interesting, and that's what I said in Earthsea. I was like, yeah, all these tropes we've all heard of, but she did them really well in like a 250-page book.
Oh, yeah.
It's so short.
That's when books were short. That's when you could.
Yeah. And I was like, well, that's what I said. It's like we could all learn a thing or two from Le Guin. It's like 250 pages, and she became a legend off of it. Like, you don't have to write 1,000 pages to make something interesting and memorable.
Moorcock's another one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, all his stuff.
Moorcock, just so short, right to the point.
Another guy who's doing short stories that he stitched together into novels. The fix-ups, Elric, all the old Elric stuff. The first couple were stitch-ups.
And Stafford and the Grey Mouser.
Those were all shorts. I mean, the magazine was everything started off in magazines back then.
That has gone
70s. That's sweet.
I think that's what happened with the Dark Tower, like we were talking about earlier. I think it was a magazine that he was like, going in. But I like, in this book we started getting all like people backstabbing each other or like scheming, because like everybody they do a council, and in the council of like all like a lot of important Northern Territory people, they start talking about Ciri, and people are like, well, Ciri's dead, but what if she isn't dead? And they're like, and then they start like accusing everybody of wanting to find her to marry her, and like I'm married. And then the one chick's, the one queen's like, well, what is poison to be the king of Cinch? And he's like, you think I'm gonna poison my wife to try to hook up with this little girl? Like,
that was very dense, that section.
Yeah,
a lot of people introduced in a hurry, and a lot of like relationships that we had never heard of. We hadn't heard of half these countries before, and it was pretty effective. Like I felt like when it was over, I had a good handle on like what the situation,
where we were at. Yeah.
But like, is that where they decide to they're like, we just better kill her?
Yeah. At the end of the whole thing, everyone was like, well, you have a son? Well, you have a son. Well, you're younger than him. Yeah. You could hook up with her, and then at the end of the whole thing, they're like, well, it's probably safer if we just kill her if we find her. Good authors borrow, great authors still. Like.
Is that I have a Wikipedia up, and it calls the Emperor of Nilfgaard wants to marry Ciri to marry her morganatically, and I had to look that up. Essentially, so that any heirs of hers wouldn't get anything, but then the Emperor would.
Yeah, they talked about that too. They're like, well, maybe he's trying to find her so he can marry her. And then the one guy brings up the point, like, well, why would he want to marry her? He has everything. And if he takes over everything, he doesn't need her,
But it's kind of like to solidify though his like
claim or whatever,
right? His claim, exactly. And
presumably the Scythians would not be fighting against him if he married her, whereas now they might be.
Right.
Looking to go back and take it back.
Well, and at this that little enclave of people, you get to know a little bit more about like the battle that they had at Sodden, and then also like where they're at right now and how they're having. Oh yeah, it's all about owning the elder blood. Yeah, that starts to become the thing when they first like. She might have the elder, and that's one thing I liked about this. We got into when Geralt and Ciri were traveling with Yaprin Zigrin, and that wizard or whatnot, and they go past these woods, and you find out like that was like the capital city of the elves or whatever, and they're pilgrimaging back to that location.
She takes the rose.
Yeah.
Which then saves her.
Well, and you find out that the queen of the elves pretty much like doomed the elves because she wanted to fight and the other elves wanted to kind of back away and kind of do their own thing. And she's like, no, we got to fight them. And only the young elves, which are the fertile ones, went and fought with her, and they all fucking died. Yeah. I'm like, oh, damn, that's rough. That is rough.
Oh, man. No, that was a powerful one for me. Just learning about the elves, it was like, oh, okay, like that makes a lot of sense now. How the elves are acting or reacting to things. And just because the choices that they made, because you're like, why would you do this? Like, essentially to just go off and like hide away and hope nobody like harms them, kind of thing, right? And so I thought that was enlightening. It was like, okay, only younger elves can actually even produce offspring. So okay,
well, it also makes sense.
But that's the sort of the sword and sorcery aspect of the storyline, right? Like it's that. The wondrous stuff, like the magic, the elves, all the stuff, it's dying. We're losing it, right? People are becoming more mundane. Humans are taking over. The elves, the dwarves, and the gnomes are basically screwed, right? They're on their way out, and there's really no hope long term. And that's the same thing. Elric and Melniboné does the same thing. It's that, the magic is on its way out, which is the truth.
Well, and it makes sense because it's like, okay, if these elves live 1,000 years or whatever, it's like, why aren't they overpopulating us? And it's like that's the way to kind of even the odds, I guess. You know,
Yeah, we just outbreed them. We're like rabbits.
yeah. Well, and that's what they say there. They're like, yeah, you got, and even the Yapin, who's a dwarf, is like, yeah, you guys said, what is it? What does he say? A woman sits on your lap and she's pregnant. Like, like
that was a good line.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was like, I gotta remember this. And I did.
Yeah. It's like you just have a woman sit on your lap and a baby comes 9 months later. You guys are ridiculous.
Yeah. But yeah, it fits into that whole like theme. But I guess the Elder Blood, like, we don't get a sense that like magic is going to come back. It's going to be like a last gasp kind of thing through Ciri. She's going to do something.
Yeah. Well, and we also get to see in this book how the humans and stuff are, kind of playing the system by having the dwarves carry their contraband and stuff past the elves and the squirtles, because they're like, oh, well, they won't attack the dwarves. They only attack humans. And they're like, okay, well, we'll pay the dwarves to kind of move our product for us. And,
But then it wasn't even that, right? It was all a test.
Yeah. Oh, man. That made me mad.
Yeah.
That, like Zach, because he's a great character. Yapin Ziggurin is a great character. And he goes, we didn't know if we could trust you or not. And he's like, what have I ever done to make you not trust me? He's like, well, some dwarves turned on us. I was like, I'm not them.
Yeah.
Well, and that was a big thing. They talked about, I don't know if it was Dandelion talking about that or if it was Yapin, but he was basically like, yeah, you're not, I'm trying to think of how he put it. But he said, yeah, it was Yapin. He said, like, I don't blame you for your ancestors. Basically, like, you are not your ancestors. You should not be blamed for what your ancestors did to us. He goes, you've been good to me, and that's all I need. He goes, I'll be your friend, and I trust you.
And sadly, that's a theme that like never gets old because it's never like gotten fully fixed, One of those, like, we can always have that theme and be like, yep, we get that people would be dumb like that. Blame a whole race of people's issues like on one person that they interact with.
But it's deliberate, right? They're putting people like Zagrin in a bind, right? He can't get out of it. Like, oh, either fight the elves or don't. But if you don't fight them, then it'll prove you're on their side. It's like, I just don't want any part of this. But no, you're not going to get that chance.
Well, that's the whole thing, right? That's Geralt's whole theme. It's like, and he was with, and then Yapin kind of figured out, like, when they were towards the end of their trip or whatever, he was like, yelling at Geralt, like, just leave then. If you think you're just going to be neutral in this, like, what if we get attacked? Are you going to help us? And at first Geralt was like, I'm not doing any of this. And then Yapin was all mad at him. And of course, Ciri is like, no, I'm going to help people. That was what she got out of the whole thing was like, I'm going to help people with my Witcher skills. Like, the skills you've taught me, I'm helping people. And then Geralt, of course Geralt's going to help. He's not going to just sit there and let these people get slaughtered and stuff. And then at the end, she goes, well, you weren't neutral. And he was just like, no, I wasn't. I was like, well, what, and even if he wanted to be neutral, there's nothing he can, you can't, they're going to try to kill you if you're just sitting there in the middle of that battle, but, it gets to the point where they start talking about, Sodden and who's going to fight there, is Geralt going to come help? And, if the next one hits, if the next battle hits. And that's one thing. I'm not big into like military fantasy, but I did like that aspect of this book where they were talking about like who can hold this section? Like, there's no way they can come over here. But then their whole thing is, well, we'll make it look like it's their idea, like they're the aggressor, and then we'll come around the south and attack them. And the sorcerers will be like, well, because that's the whole thing. They want to keep the sorcerers on there. But Vilgefortz says, we won't follow you if you're the aggressor. And then they're trying to figure out a way to make them get attacked so that they can look like the good guys. Yeah. I love that kind of sabotage, espionage type deal.
Absolutely. No, I know. No, I'm just with you. I'm still sorry. I was caught on Joe's comment. I think Ciri really is just the Luke Skywalker, right? That's what it is. That's what it comes down to. But I love the political scheming, and then it did bring them all together. Although I thought it was a little like so much all at once, and like here's all the leaders. We didn't get a lot of and maybe that's a good thing. I think that's like we kind of been talking about. It is good to keep it short because a lot of present day novels would maybe go too far into everybody's backstory to be able to bring them together. Whereas I'm like, this worked, right? And the whole thing, it worked to a degree at least. It would have been a little better to get some more characterization, but then and you still have this like constant backstabbing and changes of the plot here.
It's a really weird section because it's really dense, it's really abrupt, it's really different from the rest of the book. But on the other hand, it kind of does the job pretty well. Like like I said, you do end up kind of understanding what's going on. I can't decide if I like it or not. Like it does the work.
Did this work or didn't it work? I feel like it did, but maybe
it's just such a big contrast to the way that you wouldn't want a whole book of that.
No,
you don't get a whole book of that, right? So I'm like, I can't quite make up my mind if it's like clever or like cheap.
Well, and that's kind of a lot of what those like Moorcock or like Luke Wynn do is they'll just be like, here we go. We're just going to jump over some things, whatever. Like, just know that they're people, whatever. And there's some merit to like not having to read 500 extra pages, like.
Yeah. Well, so. I guess that's a lot of, and that's been brought back up in the video game world. I mean, I don't play as many video games as I used to, but like, I guess there's a big argument with, should you hold the player's hand more or not? Like you have these games that take 100 hours to beat, but if you would just hold the player hand a little bit more, it would be like 50 hours, So I guess that's the thing. It's like, Sapkowski and some of these people are like, I'm not just going to hold your hand and tell you every single little thing. You have to kind of, all right, like I'm going to give you a dense section and then suss it out and kind of make your own theories.
And then Malazan fan, I'm a huge fan of. So
throw me in there.
That takes me away exactly.
Oh yeah, nothing throws you in there like Malazan. That section where they're all coming to like a conclusion, like that is not how Steven Erikson would have handled that. You would have found out about that conversation by hearing whispers about it from like people who were like 3 steps removed from the actual conversation. Never would have seen the actual conversation like just laid out, right? It would have been like someone telling a story, but they would have used like different names for everybody, different nicknames, and different books, and it'd be spread out across like 5 books.
It's not until the third reread that you're like,
Oh my God.
5,000 pages later, you learn the guy's name who was actually talking at the meeting. You're like,
I love Erikson. I'm not speaking from dislike. I love Mal. Yeah. Malaysian. We should all. I'm so sick of everyone pronouncing it different ways. We should all pronounce it Malaysian.
Malaysian. Joe, I'm telling like I bring up Malazan too much when I want to make a point about stuff, but I'm going to use that Malaysian.
When Steven Erikson's going to find out, he's going to send me hate mail.
Like, oh my gosh, that's not even close.
He's going to write you in an article. This JCM Byrne fella thinks that he's funny.
Asshole.
I liked. So one of the questions I saw in the chat was, how badly did the TV show screw up the story of the book?
And I haven't made it through season 3 yet, and it's not because I don't want to. It's my wife. She's like, she goes, I know Henry's not coming back, and I don't want to watch the next season, so I don't want it to be over. That my wife hates to end stuff.
I have a little bit of that. There's a reason why I'm in the middle of like so many series, because I'll get to a point like, especially like just some of my favorites where I'm like, I'll just keep putting it off. Like, you know, they don't want it to end, where it's like, you can reread. It's okay.
Oh, she hasn't finished Lady of the Lake. She started reading the series like with me like 8 years ago, blew through all the books to the last one, and she still won't finish it. I'm like,
I feel that. I've been there many times.
I think I only watched the first season, which I actually liked.
The first season,
I heard good things.
Like it's not bad. Like it's not. I don't know, man. They did change a lot of things in the series. Like, oh gosh, what is that? What is that sorcerer's name? She's in this book too.
I know who you're talking about. Is it the one that betrays him in the end, or there's also just like
because they have
like Penelope or something, or it started with a P. Philippa.
In the show, they change her to they make her a black lady, which is fine. But then they also have her working for the Nilfgaardians. And Nilfgaardians are racist, like the most racist people ever. Like, they get so much worse in this as the books go on. And you're like, that makes no sense. Like, they would have killed her. They were like, they're the worst people ever when it comes to stuff like that. Like, you know, if you're not paying them money and you're not one of them, they'll just kill you. Like, you know.
It makes no sense. Nate's upset about it. About the changes. But I hadn't read the books at that point, so that part didn't bother me because I didn't know any better.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. And AP had a video out about like adaptations, about stuff that, and his whole like, me and him clash when it comes to adaptations. Like, I'm not gonna like it's almost like AP is like, you're not allowed to criticize people because unless you have like a master's degree or whatever and you can write a dissertation about. I'm like, no, if you're a fan of the series and you don't like what they're doing and they're not following, you can say something about it, you know.
Like when Star Wars goes, hey, we're gonna take the main thing about Luke Skywalker, that he was willing to go and like save even his own father who'd fall into the dark side, and be like, you know what, we're gonna make it so that he's just gonna kill his nephew. Okay. Let's just change it, right? No, I mean, that, like, I feel like that's demonstrably, like, anyway, I know it's not an adaptation, but I'm like, stuff like that happens, and you're like, you can't just ignore when it's just like, we've just thrown all the things.
Don't get me started about Star Wars.
Yeah.
Oh my God. No, but like, yeah, it's the thing. It's like, why would you? Oh man, we could do a whole stream about adaptations and how they screw things up. Well, and with Star Wars, it's the whole thing about how Disney uncanonized a bunch of stuff once they bought the rights. They're just like, this stuff doesn't. No, that's not real. And you're like, what? It's been real for 40 years.
I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with the fact that they didn't replace it with anything coherent. Like, if they had some kind of plan and they said, we want to do certain things, like all this backstory is going to interfere with these plot lines we want to put in the movies. Like, that's fine. You spend that many $1 billion on something, canonize whatever the hell you want. Instead, they took out all the canon, and then they had no plan. It's like, hey, let's just hire 3 guys and let's have them make different movies that don't really connect, but let's call it a trilogy. Pay attention to whether their stories make sense with each other, because people will still buy tickets. It'll be fun. And like, that's frustrating, right? You know, but I feel like if they replaced it with something really good that made sense, I don't think fans would have cared.
The point that I've been making on my channel is, you had how many years and how many stories worth of just testing. You could even just look at it as like testing, and it's like you could pick out the good things, you could leave out the bad things.
Mine it.
Use so much of it, like the Thrawn stuff, right? I'm about to finish the Thrawn trilogy, and it's like so good, man. Thrawn's such a good character, and you're like he's so tactical, and anyway, so many things that are just, you could just take out, and it's like you have all this stuff that you could see what sold, what worked, what's considered great, and then what's not. That's why I get frustrated with these, like where like the Wheel of Time adaptation, it's just like, no, we're gonna do it our way, and you're like, and then we're gonna call it its own turning of the wheel, and you're like, yeah, but you're still using the same characters, and you're still benefiting from the sales of those books, and you're still like, same with Witcher, like, come on, there's like if you're gonna call it, then call it and follow it, and if you're gonna do something else, then do something else. Well, like, at least somewhat be faithful. Like, I know you can't be perfectly
faithfully adapt Wheel of Time. The show would be like 4 hours long and so much traveling, and everyone would fall asleep.
Well, and here's the thing that I was kind of getting in with like AP is like, there's a difference. A show can be you can take a show and it can be a good show, but a bad adaptation. Because he'll be like, well, you wouldn't complain if you didn't know about the books or whatever. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we're talking about people who know what the story is. And like Halo is my perfect example of this. I actually liked the show. It is a bad adaptation of Halo, but it is a good show. I tell everybody, if you don't know the story of Halo, but you love military and sci-fi, you're gonna like this show. It is a great show, but they shouldn't use it. It's not Halo. They use Master Chief's name, they use Cortana's name, but they don't. And they even like, if you read into like what the people say, it's like, it's called the Silver Timeline or whatever. So they don't use the same team. All the team members that he actually had in the games are not his teammates and stuff. But those characters are good. You know, it's just not Halo. And I'm like, but I like the show. My wife loved the show. You know, she loves Pablo. She thinks he's so hot, so that helps.
Andor was a great show, but I don't think it was good Star Wars. Like, Star Wars is a space opera with magic wizards with laser swords, and Andor had none of that. It was about like the brutality of a bureaucratic, fascist government, which is a great story, but it's not what Star Wars is all about to me. So I thought it was a great show, but it shouldn't have been a Star Wars show. It should have been like just made a hard sci-fi show about an evil empire. You didn't need, and none of it needed to be Star Wars.
Well, that's my thing.
I'm in the minority on that. Most people love Andor, and I'm just like.
I think that's a good distinction you guys are both making. Is like, you can have a great show and just, it's like, and it could still be a bad adaptation. That's fair. That's
two things can be true at once. That's what a lot of people don't. A lot of people who want to like bash people, it's like they don't realize two things can be true at the same time.
But when you're reviewing it on Rotten Tomatoes, people will they'll review it or trash it based on either criteria, right? There's no universal except like, okay, if you're going to review it as a show or review it as an adaptation, but don't conflate the two. But people will slam it because it's a bad adaptation, right? And it's very hard to make those kind of careful distinctions. Like, Rotten Tomatoes doesn't say like, was it a good adaptation and was it a good show? Like, they don't give you like two numbers.
Yeah,
false dichotomies are the bedrock of our political system. So of course, that's all we know how to think in.
Well, that's the thing. That's on the reviewer. And especially the reviewer can be like, and this is the thing, I have never read Lord of the Rings, so I can't tell you if it's a good adaptation, right? But I can tell you those are good movies. So that's one of the books that was on my list this year to get through. So it's probably a November read.
Yes.
But I can't tell you if it's a good I've heard that a certain big character's not in it. It's not in the movies. That was like, one of the main guys. But that's the thing. That's on the reviewer to be like, I've never read these books, but I really like the show. Or if you are a reviewer who has read the books, you can say that. You can be like, this is a bad adaptation. They don't follow stuff like they should, and then go on with your review.
You want a nuanced review? Good luck.
Like, after dropping that bomb, or maybe just do it at the end.
Just Nate's about Master Chef. I don't even know.
Master Chief refuses to wear his armor. Oh,
I just saw it was a review of it was like the latest Ant-Man and the Quantumania, and they were like getting so mad because it was like, why are they going to this different place they've never been before? You don't know anything about it, and yet you're taking off your helmet every single second. I felt that one.
You pay all this money for an actor's face, they got to put it on camera.
That's exactly.
That was
That's
the
why.
whole thing about Halo. Like, and that was the one thing that people hated more than anything. They're like, Master Chief took his helmet off in the like 2 episodes in, and that's one thing I will say. I understand. You're paying Pablo a lot of money. He's a good-looking guy. All right, he wants you to know that he's Master Chief too. He doesn't want to be a voiceover actor, right? But you should have done it at the last episode of the season.
I've been impressed with the Mandalorian sticks to that, you know?
Yeah, same thing.
That's pretty
He had to take his He doesn't want to be a voice actor. He wants you to know I'm the guy. You know, I am the Mandalorian. I'm not just the voice of the Mandalorian.
We got
That's okay. We pulled a Stephen King and just went on our whole other thing. Like we'll pull it back around here eventually, people. Just give us 200 pages. You know?
Really critique the show. We all need to watch the show.
Yes, I need to finish season 3. I've watched the first 2 seasons, and like I said, I've seen good things and bad things, and you know, I will say Henry Cavill, perfect Witcher. The guy who played Dandelion, perfect Dandelion. So good. Jennifer grew on me. I wasn't sure at first. I wasn't a big fan of her at first, but she grew on me. But like Triss wasn't that wasn't good. The whole Philippa thing didn't make any sense. Although at the beginning of this season, the guy who plays Dijkstra, awesome. Like I the way that they like he's getting whipped and stuff by Philippa like in his bedroom, and he's like, you know, so he plays this outwardly like tough like spy king, but like in his private life he likes to be beat. Like I thought that was pretty cool.
Did you guys, when reading these books, do you picture the bard? What's his name?
Dandelion.
Dandelion. Do you picture him as older or the same age as the guy in the show? Because for some reason, reading this, I thought of him as a much older guy, but I don't know if I just made that up out of nowhere or if that's actually like in the books.
See, and I don't even watch the show, and I still am like, I've seen the previews, I've seen plenty of stuff, and I still put Dandelion as the guy in the show.
Okay,
yeah,
fair.
Well, and what did they say? What did Dijkstra say to him? He said, "You're almost 40. You act like you're almost 30, and you think you're almost 20."
Okay, so he's almost 40, but almost 40 in a medieval setting, he's going to look old, right? He's not going to look like young and fresh.
Well, maybe not Dandelion, because Dandelion doesn't work hard. Dandelion has a pretty posh life, so he might be okay.
And he runs from a lot of angry husbands, so I don't
know. Part of it is his dialogue, and I do the audio, so it's the way the audiobook narrator, I think, kind of reads him. Yeah. It does make it this kind of younger, like kind of hip and like always with something on his tongue, you know, which it doesn't say like an older, like grizzled might be like pissed about stuff, but for him it's more just like this. If he feels younger because he's always like with a quip and some witty pithy saying or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing I will say is like I prefer the narrator of the books here to the video game character of Dandelion. Like in the video games, Dandelion always seemed like a surfer, like a California surfer dude. Like I'm like, that's not the way I picture him from the books. Like, but yeah, like somebody was talking about that because I was watching. Normally when I finish a book and then I do my review or whatever, I'll watch some other reviews and see what other people thought about the books. And like some people were saying like they feel like Dandelion has some kind of not immortality, but yeah, he seems young even though the time is going by. He never changes. Like he never, at least in their mind, he never ages. So I don't know how long it's been since The Last Wish, because The Last Wish was before, like some of those stories happened before Ciri was even born. right? And then, he talk, So, and Ciri's what, 13 now at the end of this book?
Yeah.
So at least 13 years has passed, and Dandelion is still Dandelion.
And at the 13 is when he's about 40, right?
Yeah, he says you're almost 40, but
right.
So he's in his late 30s now.
Yeah, maybe he's an elf.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing. I love that. I love that in this where he was talking about where some guy was like, these bloody elves and stuff. And he's like, and the elves like, well, we've been intermingling our blood together for the last several decades now.
What do you think?
One of us raise our hands who doesn't have any elf blood in them. I was like, gotcha.
Neo-Nazis take 20andMe tests. And they always find out they're like 8% like African. It's like, oh, oops.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But yeah. But I loved towards the end where Ciri kind of goes through the she has her little Witcher montage, right? As Geralt's teaching her how to get through the wheel and the pendulum and stuff. And I love that. Like, Sapkowski is great. It is great with like battle scenes and technique and stuff. And like, he's like, yeah, you'll never be big enough to attack like a basilisk or something. He goes, but he's like, when it hits your sword, you don't fight against it. You take it and you spin with it. You use its momentum to help you. And so we get that little training montage, which I thought was cool. And then you get the training for wizardry with Yennefer at the very end of the book. And I think what like one of the last scenes is where Ciri like blows up a hut or something at the end where she was moving a basket and she's like, I moved that basket. And Yennefer's like, a little bit more, you can try harder. And then like she threw the basket over and she goes, well, a little bit. And then she goes, uh-oh. And it's like, no one will miss that shack anyway.
Yeah.
I was like, I love it. Like, you get to see like Ciri's really, is really coming into her own with her magical powers. And like, I'm like, of course you're gonna leave us right there when she's like just gets a hold of some power, and you're like, oh, now what can she do?
Right. I like what you authors do, which is like felt like a scene, especially where she's trying to navigate the obstacle course or whatever, and they're like, oh, you got to spin with it. I'm like, it just feels like the author knows something extra that you don't know, or has some real life expertise, and I love that. Like, kind of like oh yeah, that feels good. Like I might have even learned something there,
Yeah.
Like, I like that a lot.
Well, I don't know about Joe over there, but like I like to do that when I'm writing, and because I wasn't the biggest reader when I was a kid. I was more of a movie person, so like I associate being very visual with people. So I want, like, if I'm writing a fight scene or a battle scene, like, I want them to see it. I want them to know how the person did it. Like, okay, they moved this way, and then they came down with the sword and attacked the ankle instead of just like, oh, they slashed back and forth and then they stabbed the person. Like, I want you to know how they did it. Like, and I like that when other authors do that as well.
Because we want our heroes to win because they're better people, because they have virtues. We don't just want them to win because they're lucky or they were born stronger. It's like what John was saying about Rey and their use of the Force. She's just better at using the Force than everyone, so she beats them in all the fights, right? Which is boring. Like, it doesn't feel like she earned it. She just was lucky to be born with a ton of midichlorians or whatever the reason is.
Yeah.
But it's not earned. But when a fighter can do something and you can show them, the reader, that it's clever, we think of cleverness as a virtue. So then it's like, oh, they're actually like a better, because they thought about it and they planned and they were trying. Like, they weren't just, oh, I was born bigger and tougher, so I won.
Yeah.
So I thought about it. I planned something. I was careful. I trained hard, and that's how I was able to pull off this move in a fight. So that's always what we like we like our victories to be earned based on something.
Well, and also the whole thing where she kept losing. She kept getting like, and Triss was like when she took her clothes off, Triss like, she has hematomas all over her hips and like and like her shoulders are like orange and stuff from these yellow and orange from these
showing
bruises.
us how hard she tries.
Yeah,
and that's another virtue, right? That hard work is another virtue that we appreciate. So when she does something smart, or when she shows us really hard work, we feel like she's going to earn her victories. Because fundamentally, Ciri's got this tremendous power that's unearned.
Yeah,
right. She didn't blow that hut down because of that, right? So we need her to show us that she deserves the victories if she gets them later.
Exactly. That you are dead on there. It's like, yeah, we know she is, and I'm not a huge fan of like the chosen one trope, but any trope can be done well, and that's the thing. Like we know she's the chosen one. He's already told us from the very beginning she's the chosen one, and we know there's some secret magical chaos magic that she has that's really powerful, but we show her getting beat up all the time, wanting to be a better warrior, but she can't quite figure it out at first. And then even with Yennefer, she has a hard time. She gets nosebleeds because she can't, and she barely can move anything at first. And also through this, we learn what Geralt went through, because Geralt's just been a badass since we've known him, right? I mean, he gets messed up every once in a while. He's not perfect, but like Geralt went through all this too. Like he earned this by getting his butt beat all the time by Vesemir. Like Vesemir talks about how bad, Geralt was when he was a kid, how ornery he was, and I had to put him in line.
Yeah. Well, I love like one of those virtues is like that sticking to it, right? Yeah. We love that, like, even though they're getting beat down, and that's what Ciri is, one of those you like start to root for because you're like, you know what? She's getting, it's you only fail if you don't get back up, right? And she's
that's Cradle, right? What's Lyndon's one useful characteristic? He just works harder. He outworks everybody else. That's his only defining.
I know. That's the only thing he's better at everybody. Then it's just I can outwork you.
He's not funny. He's not, anything except he's hardworking. That's his only.
And he gets those points.
Yeah, right. It's like he's willing to kill the slimes just day after day. Killing slimes, right?
I just keep. That's what I tell people. It's like one of my favorite. I coach my son's football team and stuff. One of my favorite things to say is I may not be better. He goes, but I'm like a bad penny. I just keep showing up. Eventually, you'll get good. Yeah.
No, I like that perspective you guys give. That's so cool. Like, I really like that. That enlightens me, as one who I don't know how you guys do that and make these cool stories and then make them, just so much fun and just to get that little insight. It's great.
Sweat and blood.
Right.
Tears and yelling at yourself saying, you're not good enough. You're not good enough.
And trunks full of books that don't do that.
Right?
You have
you gotta learn somehow.
You have no idea how many bad chapters I have tucked away in boxes and bad books.
But it's hard to realize that because I've been a reviewer. I was a blogger before getting on YouTube, and that's where just so many will just like, here you go. Here's essentially a first draft of a first copy, and you're like, you got to have a little awareness here. I'm all for self-publishing. I love it. In fact, I think it's a great thing, and I think we live in what a time to be alive to have just this whole different wing of books that can be unique and can have their different ways, but you still have to get some things right.
Yeah. Well, and like John was saying earlier, he was like, the good ones borrow, great ones steal, or whatever. But that's not the way I think. The way I'm like, I take my from sports, I take my competitiveness, and I'm reading The Witcher, and I'm like, God dang, his prose are good. I was like, my prose will never be that good, but I think I can get to this. I can get to the battle scenes. I can get to this story. I can write, it makes me want to be better. I'm like, okay, I can use my strengths and push towards that,
Well, look how good. I don't think Sanderson wants to have great prose. Like, he wants you to be so into the story that you've forgot. Like, you don't even know what you're reading other than just this great story that you're moving along with. But he still has great lines here and there too.
He's trying to write 8,000 to 10,000 words a day. You can't write like good, clever, interesting, really diverse sentences and knock out 10,000 words a day. Like it's physically impossible. You can only knock out 10,000 words in a day on on the regular if you're writing very sort of straightforward. Like it can be clear, but it has to be really like formulaic sentences, right? Formulaic paragraphs. It's like being funny, right? You can't write funny and hit 10,000 words a day. Like jokes. Like they don't come that way. It takes a certain amount of inspiration, but that's.
And I'm sorry to warn you, my camera's running out of battery. It just warned me.
Yeah.
So
I was just about to say we're hitting that mark where it's almost about time for us to hit the old dusty trail here. But yeah, because these books aren't super long, so it's no 2-hour discussion for these books. But so Joe, do you have anything? I know you said you just went to the con. We talked about that a little bit. What are you up to, and where can they find you?
I almost used a bathroom next to Jim Butcher. That was my exciting story. I was in the bathroom at Dragon Con, and I was standing a few feet away from him before, and I didn't have the guts to go up and say anything. So I had nothing to say, really. And then I went to the men's room the next day, and I was leaving, and he was entering, and we almost collided in the doorway of the men's room. And for a moment, I was like, I could just spin around right here and follow him in, and you like stand at the urinal next to Jim Butcher, and I could hang out there. I don't know what I would do, but I thought about it for just a moment, and then I had this flash of self-restraint, very unusual for me, and I was like, don't follow another man into the bathroom. That's just a life rule that you should just follow, Joe. I said to myself, don't do it. It's never gonna have a positive outcome.
There's no positive outcome.
But it got George Costanza in trouble, though.
Yeah, right. It's never gonna be good. No good. It might not hurt, but it's not gonna help. So I left. I went to my friends, and I said, I just almost went to that's all I did. I told all my friends, and they all looked at me like I was very strange. Like, why are you telling us this? I'm like, it's the only school story I have right now. But that was very exciting at Dragon Con. I had an amazing time. There's some amazing people there. And you should read my book, Shadow Hyperion. It came out last Tuesday, which is never going to get any better. Right now, it's a 5-star book on Amazon, and it's only going to get worse. So I don't know if I said that on the air, if I said that before we started recording. But that's my marketing pitch. So that was it. That's my good story.
Oh man! Earlier this year, we were up at we did Harry Potter World. I guess up, down, I don't know, wherever in Florida. We go back to our hotel, and we're walking in with the family, and we just happened to kind of reach a point at the same time as Warwick Davis and his wife, and they had this guy with them, and I'm a huge Willow fan. Star Wars, whatever you name it. And I'm sitting here going, I'm just this is literally the last thing that I'm ever expecting in the history of the world to happen. His wife is the sweetest thing in the world. She just smiles and and I'm just and the guy with me is like, what are you guys doing here? Get it. Move along here, and I was just okay. And I turned to my wife and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was Warwick Davis. Oh my gosh. And I look like a total idiot here, just completely starstruck. So, you could have done that.
I did. The actress who played Kaylee on Firefly, she was doing. Do you remember? Did you ever guys watch Firefly? So Kaylee was the engineer.
Yeah.
The woman. So the actress who played her was at the con the whole time, and she spent every day at the bar, 15 feet from where I hung out at the bar. I think they were doing a mockumentary about Dragon Con. So I think she was working, but she was at the bar in the same seat every day. And apparently, at one point, I was it was really loud, so I'm shouting, "Oh my God, do you know who that is?" And Dirk Ashton comes up, he's like, "Joe, you're being really loud. You are now the asshole at the bar." Shouting to other people that's the woman who played Jules Strait. And I was
okay.
I'm that guy. Okay.
I'm 100% gonna be like you, Joe, because I told my wife, I was like, Jim Butcher comes to Chicago or whatever, we're gonna be I'm gonna be the guy because I have multiple books, autographed books by him, and I'm gonna be the guy with the book could you sign my book? I love you. I write because of you.
There's this guy, Ganesh, who's from Seattle. He came to Dragon Con to meet indie authors. He was there for 1 day, and he brought like a suitcase, and it didn't have clothes. It had a full of books.
No clothes, just the same clothes all week.
He had clothes in a different bag, but the suitcase was full of books. He carried them around. Had like Ryan Cahill's sign, like Ryan Cahill's like life's work, which was like a stack.
Yeah.
Fit it on my camera, but it's a big stack. Right, those are big fat books, and
Nice.
he got a whole bunch of people to sign. He got me to sign. It was so cool. He got a whole bunch of.
That's so cool.
It was a really nice moment.
I would love to do that. That is amazing.
Yeah.
That would be so cool.
It was on. He hung out with me. Like, I mean, we're nothing special. We hung out with him for like a day and a half. He's a great guy, and it was just
Yeah. You're not. You guys are just nothing special. We just, you put your pants on like anybody else, except when you do, you write great books. Okay. So
I just, I'm the same as you, except for I sell 200,000 books every time I write one. It's like we're all the same.
If Jim Butcher tried to do that, there'd be like 1,000 people following him around, right?
Yeah,
None of us
true.
had 1,000 people. We had a guy who was like excited.
What a guy.
So we could
That is cool.
afford to be like, oh, hang out, come to lunch with us, whatever.
Yeah.
Where Jim Butcher really can't. Like, I mean, totally fair. He would be swamped if he tried to, Anyway.
Yeah. So Bryce, what do you got going on here in the next week or so?
Nothing much. Gosh, work has just been insane. So it's just cool to be able to do this, hang out and talk, the stuff that I love and hang out. Excuse me. I was kind of already thrown out on my channel. Like I'm trying to get, I want the audience pick book for October. I'm trying to do a horror focus because I'm totally unique.
Got to
and, do things like that are completely avant-garde. And really changing things. But I just thought it'd be fun. The last audience poll I did, they got me to read The Grace of Kings, which ended up being really good. I really loved it. So anyway, I am excited to do that. So that's pretty much it. Just I keep on keeping on. I'm like barely keeping a schedule right now just because like the courts appointed me to like all of the emergency hearings, it feels like. And I'm literally this next week, I'm in 4 full days worth of trial, and I'm just like, shoot me now. It will be miserable.
Shoot me now.
So, anyway,
the energy I want defending me in court.
Well, if I can give you a suggestion, a short book that is one of my favorite books from the 1800s, and it's free. David Tennant is one of the voices on Audible. Is Carmilla. Carmilla is for like 1876. It's like what Bram Stoker kind of got his ideas from. Amazing.
Okay. I'm putting that on the list. That's great.
Yeah, the audiobook's only like 3 hours or something like that.
Great. That's awesome.
So
that's the way to do it.
But yeah, it's a great
pad my
story.
numbers. Thank you. You know me well. I need some padding.
Yeah. It's a way to just like get an extra book in that but took you no time at all.
Yeah, that's great.
But yeah, man, I appreciate all you guys on here. Stuff that's going on with me. I am currently in the process of uploading book 3 into KDP. So
yeah,
it will be on pre-order because that's the only way I can figure out how to do an audiobook on launch day is to pre-order it and then because you have to pick your book out, so you can't just do it all at the same time. So I will have my book will be on pre-order More Than a God War. And hopefully we will have the audiobook on release day.
Oh, that's awesome.
I
just looked it up. Carmilla's already in my library on Audible. So
I feel like I've already wanted to read it. Yeah,
I didn't even know. Yeah. So thank you.
But yeah, I appreciate everybody who's stepping in. It looks like we've had some people here for like the whole time, which is awesome. And for anybody on the reread, the first longer form, there was a short story by Lord Byron, but we won't talk about that now. But thank you all. And
thank you.
We will see you in the next one.